The rain fell not in drops but in sheets, turning a handwritten cardboard sign into a blur of smudged crayon. 7-year-old Maya stood behind her lemonade stand, her yellow raincoat swallowing her small frame. Every cup she sold was counted not in cents, but in days of her father's life. He needed medication they could no longer afford. And in the back seat of a silent black luxury car idling at the curb, a billionaire watched her, his hand frozen on the door handle. What he did next would unravel a story hidden in plain sight. Her father's heart medication cost more each month than their rent. Maya was 7. The lemonade was 50 cents a cup. She had done the math in her notebook, a child's scribble next to a towering, impossible number. In that car was Elijah Thorne, a man who had built a pharmaceutical empire worth $12 billion. He sold the very medicine her father could not afford. This is not just a story about charity. It is a story about a collision between the system he helped create and the one child standing in the rain, trying to beat it. Marcus Bell was a man who built things. For 15 years, he worked as a foreman for a construction company in Cincinnati, his hands calloused from turning blueprints into schools and libraries. He believed in the integrity of a structure, in the promise of a foundation that held. His own foundation was his daughter, Maya. He called her his little engineer for the elaborate cardboard forts she would build in their living room. Then, 8 months ago, a different kind of structure failed. Marcus collapsed on a job site. The diagnosis was dilated cardiomyopathy. His heart was literally wearing out. The medication prescribed was a drug called Cardioregen. It wasn't a cure, but it was a lifeline, a sophisticated beta blocker and vasodilator combination that could reduce the heart's workload, potentially adding years of functional life. Without it, his doctor said plainly, his heart would continue its slow, relentless decline. With it, he could play in the park with Maya again. He could go back to work. The cost for a 1-month supply was $2,400. His insurance, through the construction company, had a specialty drug copay that capped at $150 a month. It was a good plan, until the company switched providers at the start of the year. The new insurer denied prior authorization for Cardioregen. They argued an older, generic medication should be tried first. Marcus and his wife, Chloe, a part-time dental hygienist, appealed. They submitted letters from his cardiologist explaining that the generic had failed in similar cases, that Marcus's particular strain of cardiomyopathy responded uniquely to Cardioregen's specific formulation. The appeal was denied. The external review was denied. The clock was ticking. They used their savings to pay for 2 months of the medication out of pocket. $4,800 gone. Then the savings were gone. Chloe picked up extra weekend shifts. Marcus tried to return to light duty, but the weakness and dizziness were too severe. They sold his truck. They moved from their 3-bedroom house into a cramped 2-bedroom apartment in a complex where the rain that day pooled in the cracked parking lot. The final blow came in a pale blue envelope. The insurance company's final determination. Cardioregen was deemed not medically necessary for his condition. The monthly price was now fully theirs to bear. The math became a terrifying specter in their small kitchen. Chloe's income, plus Marcus's dwindling short-term disability, minus rent, utilities, food. The result was always a negative number that ended with the medicine. Maya listened to these hushed, tense kitchen conversations from the hallway. She didn't understand formularies or prior authorizations, but she understood that her daddy was sick, that medicine made him better, and that the medicine cost money they didn't have. She saw the fear in her mother's eyes, a silent, widening panic. So the little engineer got to work. She found a cardboard box. She mixed lemonade from a powder using the last of the sugar. She made a sign. Her logic was childlike and flawless. People get thirsty in the rain, too. And every 50 cents was a tiny brick in the wall she was trying to build between her father and the thing that was trying to take him away. In the back of the silent luxury car, Elijah Thorne watched this scene unfold. At 58, he was a man who had built a different kind of empire. Thorne Pharmaceuticals had begun 30 years earlier with a single patented drug delivery system. Now, it was a behemoth. Cardio Regen was one of its flagship products, a drug he had personally championed through development. He was returning from a contentious board meeting where quarterly profits were discussed in billions. His driver had taken a shortcut through this suburban neighborhood to avoid freeway traffic. Elijah wasn't looking for a moral dilemma. He was exhausted. He was, though he'd never admit it, profoundly lonely. His wife, Rebecca, had passed from breast cancer 5 years prior. They had never had children. His life had contracted to the sterile spaces of offices, boardrooms, and his stark, modern penthouse that overlooked the city but felt utterly disconnected from it. He funded a children's hospital wing that bore his name, but he hadn't set foot inside it in years. Charity was a line item, a tax strategy, a way to mute the quiet, accusing voice in his head, the one that whispered about the ever-rising list prices, the insurance battles, the patients who fell through the cracks. He saw the small yellow figure first, a splash of color in the gray drizzle. Then he saw the sign. Lemonade 50C. Then, as the car drew closer, the smaller print underneath, written with heartbreaking sincerity, "For my dad's medicine." He felt a jolt, like a live wire touching his spine. He told his driver to stop. He watched as a woman hurried past the stand, umbrella held low, not even glancing at the girl. He saw Maya's shoulders sag just for a second before she straightened them again. He observed the precise, careful way she poured a cup, the intensity of her focus. This wasn't play. This was a child's desperate audit of human kindness, and his company's medication was the villain in her story. A war erupted inside him. The cold, calculating part, the part that had built Thorne Pharmaceuticals, reasoned it away. This was an anecdote, a statistical outlier. The system was complex. High prices funded future research. The insurance company was the barrier, not him. But another part, a part he had buried with Rebecca, screamed. This was the human cost. This was the endpoint of every spreadsheet, every pricing decision, every lobbyist's effort to protect patent extensions. It was a 7-year-old girl in a raincoat, shivering. His hand went to the car door handle. To do what? Hand her $100 bill. That would be charity, a salve for his conscience that changed nothing. Buy all her lemonade. A cute viral moment, empty of meaning. He froze. For a long minute, the only sound was the rhythmic thump of the windshield wipers. He was a man who commanded boardrooms, who negotiated with world governments, paralyzed by a sidewalk lemonade stand. Then he did something he hadn't done in years. He thought not as CEO Elijah Thorne, but as Elijah, Rebecca's husband. He remembered her fury during her own treatment, at the impersonal bureaucracy of healthcare, at the cold language of copays and maximum benefits. She had called it a moral sickness. He had patted her hand and told her he'd fix it. He never did. He looked at Maya's determined face, mirrored in the tinted window. This was the fix. Not a donation, but a confrontation with himself, with his legacy, with the very machine he had created. He opened the car door and stepped out into the rain. The rain soaked through his tailored wool coat immediately. Elijah Thorne walked toward the lemonade stand, his Italian leather shoes sinking into the wet grass of the curb. Maya watched him approach, her eyes wide, not with fear but with a kind of solemn calculation. She had seen customers before, but never one who emerged from a car like that. 50 cents, please, she said, her voice clear over the patter of rain on the small plastic tarp over her stand. Elijah looked at the little cardboard box, at the pitcher of lemonade, at the mason jar with a few coins and a single damp dollar bill inside. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his money clip. He removed all the bills. They were hundreds. He held them out to her. "For the lemonade," he said. Maya stared at the money, then up at his face. She didn't reach for it. "Mister," she said with the blunt honesty of a child, "that's too much. I can't make change for that, it's just 50 cents. Her refusal, grounded in simple arithmetic and fairness, hit him harder than any accusation. "Keep it," he said, his voice softer than he intended. "For the medicine." Her posture changed. The merchant vanished, replaced by a worried daughter. "You know about the medicine?" "I think I do," Elijah said. He crouched down, ignoring the water seeping into his trousers. At eye level, the scene was even more devastating. He saw the careful neatness of her stand, the pride in its construction. "What's your name?" "Maya Bell. My daddy is Marcus Bell. He needs cardio region." She sounded out the pharmaceutical name with practiced care. "It's very expensive." "I know it is," Elijah said. A wave of nausea passed through him. He, Elijah Thorne, was having his nose rubbed in the consequence of his own product's pricing by a second grader. "How much do you have so far?" Maya looked into the jar. $3.75. She said it without despair, as a simple statement of progress. "But it's only been 1 hour, and the rain might stop." $3.75 against a $2,400 price tag. The brutal, innocent math of it was a physical blow. Elijah placed the stack of bills on the cardboard counter. It was over $2,000. "This should cover it," he said. Maya looked at the money, then at him, her brow furrowed in deep suspicion. Children have a primal radar for things that are too good to be true. "Why would you do that? You don't know us." It was the same question his own conscience was screaming. "Because sometimes," he said, struggling for an answer that wasn't a lie, "people need help, and other people can give it." She shook her head, a firm, decisive motion. "My mom says not to take money from strangers. It's a rule." She pushed the stack slightly back toward him. "But you can have a cup of lemonade for 50 cents. In that moment, Elijah Thorne, billionaire, was schooled in integrity by a 7-year-old. Charity was rejected. Transaction, honest and simple, was accepted. He fumbled in his pocket for change, finally finding a quarter and 2 dimes and a nickel. He placed them in the jar. The sound of the coins was pathetic. Maya, however, brightened. A legitimate sale. She poured a cup of lemonade with the concentration of a chemist and handed it to him. "Thank you," he said. He took a sip. It was sickly sweet and watery, the best thing he had ever tasted. "You're welcome," she said, then added, "My daddy used to make the best lemonade. From real lemons. But real lemons cost money, so we use powder now." Elijah felt the acid of that sentence burn deeper than the citric acid in the drink. He made a decision. "Maya, would you take me to meet your daddy? If I promise your mom is there, I might be able to help with the medicine. For real." She studied him again. The rain had plastered his gray hair to his forehead, making him look less imposing, more like a sad, wet man. "Okay," she said finally, "but I have to pack up my stand first. I can't leave it." He helped her. The billionaire and the child, folding a soggy cardboard box, pouring out the leftover lemonade into a storm drain, carefully placing the jar of coins and the damning stack of $100 bills into a small backpack. He carried the folded cardboard while she led him, a small yellow beacon, across the parking lot and up a flight of concrete stairs to apartment 204. Chloe Bell opened the door. Her face, etched with exhaustion, shifted from confusion to alarm in a heartbeat. She saw a soaked, well-dressed stranger holding her daughter's lemonade stand. "Maya, what's going on?" "This man bought lemonade, Mama. He wants to talk about Daddy's medicine." Elijah spoke quickly, sensing the door about to slam. "Mrs. Bell, my name is Elijah Thorne. I mean no harm. I saw your daughter's stand. I run the company that makes cardio region." The color drained from Chloe's face. It was not the reaction of someone recognizing a benefactor. It was the look of someone confronting the source of their torment. Her grip on the door tightened. "Thorne Pharmaceuticals. You're Elijah Thorne." "Yes." Her eyes flickered with a fury so potent it was almost tangible. "And you're here to what? See how the other half lives? Get a photo op with the poor kid selling lemonade?" Her voice was a low, controlled tremor. "No," Elijah said, the word feeling inadequate. "I'm here because I saw her, and I knew what she was selling it for, and I can't walk away from that." A man's voice, weak but firm, came from inside the apartment. "Chloe, who is it?" Chloe Bell held Elijah's gaze for a long, charged moment. Then, with a stiffness that spoke of unleashed anger barely restrained, she stepped back. "Come in, Mr. Thorne. You should see exactly what your medicine has done." The apartment was clean but suffused with the faint, metallic scent of illness and anxiety. Marcus Bell was on the couch, propped up with pillows. A blanket was draped over his legs. He was a big man, his frame now seeming too large for the subdued spirit inside it. He looked at Elijah with the wary eyes of a cornered animal. Elijah stood in the middle of their living room, water pooling at his feet, feeling more like an intruder than he ever had in his life. He explained again, haltingly, who he was. He saw the shock, then the hardening in Marcus's expression. "So you're the guy," Marcus said, his voice gravelly. "The guy who prices a pill at what, $80 a pop, while my insurance company plays games and my daughter stands in the rain." "The wholesale price is $72 per tablet," Elijah said automatically, the number rolling off his tongue from 1,000 reports. The moment he said it, he wished he could claw the words back. He had just quoted the wholesale price of a pill to the man who needed it to live. Marcus let out a short, bitter laugh. $72 for one pill, and you need to take it every day. Do the math, Mr. Thorne. It's easy math. Even my daughter can do it. He gestured to a folder on the coffee table, spilling over with paperwork. "We've done everything right. We appealed. We got our doctor to write letters. We jumped through every hoop. The insurance company's final denial came last week. They say it's not medically necessary. My cardiologist says without it, I have maybe a year before my heart gives out. So what's your play here? You gonna give us a month's supply for a good headline? And then what?" Elijah had no answer. The man's blunt, unvarnished reality dismantled all his boardroom talking points about value, innovation, and risk. This was the risk. A man on a couch, a girl in the rain. "I don't have a play," Elijah said, the admission shocking himself. "I saw Maya. I haven't been able to think about anything else since. I want to fix this." "Fix it?" Chloe interjected, her arms crossed. "You can't fix it. You can give us charity. That's not a fix. That's a temporary patch. What about the next person? What about the family in the next apartment or the next city going through the exact same thing with one of your other $72 pills?" She had pinpointed the fatal flaw in his entire impulse. He was thinking about absolving his own guilt in this one poignant case, not addressing the systemic monster he fed. "Let me start here," he said, desperation creeping into his voice. "Let me get Marcus his medication, immediately, no cost, for as long as he needs it, and let me look at your case. The insurance denial, there might be avenues." "Avenues?" Marcus coughed, a dry, hacking sound. "The avenue is a $2,400 cliff every month. That's the only avenue." Maya, who had been quietly listening from the doorway to the kitchen, spoke up. "Daddy, he gave me money, a lot of money, but I didn't take it because of the stranger rule." She pointed to her backpack. Chloe unzipped it and saw the bundled hundreds. She looked at Elijah, her expression unreadable. She didn't touch the money. "You can't buy this away, Mr. Thorne." "I'm not trying to buy it," he said, though he knew he was. "I'm trying to understand it from this side of the desk. Please, let me have my driver go to a pharmacy right now. Let me get you the medication, tonight. You can argue with me tomorrow, but let him have it tonight." The silence in the room was heavy, broken only by the tick of a wall clock and the sound of the rain. It was Marcus who broke it. He looked at his daughter, at her hopeful, confused face. He looked at the deep lines of stress on his wife's face. The practical need defeated pride. "Okay," Marcus whispered, "get the pills." An hour later, a month's supply of cardio region was in the Bell's apartment, delivered by a confused but obedient chauffeur. Elijah had stayed, sitting awkwardly on a kitchen chair he'd pulled into the living room. He'd examined the denial letters. He'd seen the precise, bureaucratic language designed to frustrate and deter. It was a language he knew well. His company's legal department used similar phrasing when defending against pricing lawsuits. As Marcus took his first dose from the new supply, a tangible shift occurred. The immediate crisis was, for 1 month, alleviated. The tension in the room softened from outright hostility to a simmering, profound mistrust. "You have a good daughter," Elijah said quietly to Marcus. "I know," Marcus said, his eyes on Maya, who was finally smiling as she showed her father the coins from her jar. "She shouldn't have to be this good." That sentence lodged in Elijah's heart like a shard of glass. He made a promise then, not to the Bells, but to himself. "I'm going to find out why your claim was denied. Not just the 'because we said so' reason, the real reason." He returned the next day, and the day after that. He didn't bring more money. He brought a notepad. He asked questions. He had his personal assistant, astounded but professional, pull every string to get the complete case file from the insurance company. What he discovered was not an error, but a pattern. The insurance provider, SureShield Health, had a specific clause in its contract with employers. For specialty tier drugs like Cardio-Regen, if a suitable generic alternative existed, even if it was only suitable on paper, based on outdated studies, prior authorization would be extremely scrutinized. Marcus's construction company had switched to SureShield precisely because of its lower premiums. The lower premium was funded by aggressively denying expensive drug claims. It was a brutal, simple equation. But Elijah dug deeper into the world of pharmacy benefit managers, the shadowy middlemen who negotiated drug prices. He discovered that Thorne Pharmaceuticals had, in fact, offered a patient assistance program for Cardio-Regen. It was buried on a website with a daunting 30-page application form. Few doctors knew about it. Even fewer patients navigated it successfully. The program was designed to be a PR bullet point, not a functional safety net. He was in the Bell's kitchen explaining this to Chloe when his phone rang. It was his chief financial officer. The quarterly earnings call was in 2 days. Analysts were asking pointed questions about a potential public relations sensitivity regarding Cardio-Regen's pricing. A rumor was circulating. Someone had talked. Chloe watched him hang up, her eyes sharp. "Trouble in paradise, Mr. Thorne." "Someone leaked that I'm involved with a patient case," he said, running a hand over his face. "Wasn't me," Marcus said from the couch. "I don't have anyone to tell." But Maya had told her teacher, and her teacher had told the school counselor, concerned about the strange man now visiting the family. The counselor had made a routine call to child services just to be safe. That call had sparked a minor investigation, and a caseworker had spoken to a neighbor. That neighbor had a nephew who worked for the local news. The story was no longer a private tragedy. It was a spark, and the tinder of public frustration over drug prices was bone dry. A local news reporter, a tenacious woman named Anya Morris, knocked on the Bell's door that evening. She had heard a tip: pharmaceutical billionaire personally intervening in local man's drug cost crisis. Chloe, furious, was about to send her away when Elijah, who was once again there, stopped her. "Talk to her," he said, a wild, reckless idea forming. "Are you insane?" Chloe hissed. "This is our private hell." "It's not private anymore," Elijah said. "The leak came from my world. They're trying to scare me off. If we talk to her, we control the story. We can show them what this really looks like." Marcus, who had been growing stronger with each consistent dose of his medication, nodded slowly. "He's right, Chloe. We've been hiding in shame. Maybe it's time we didn't." He looked at Elijah. "But you're in the story too. You don't get to be the white knight. You're part of the problem." "I know," Elijah said. "I'll talk to her. I'll answer every question." The interview with Anya Morris was explosive. It aired the next night. There was footage of the rainy lemonade stand, recreated by the news crew with Maya's help. There were close-ups of the denial letters. There was Marcus on camera describing the fear of leaving his family. And there was Elijah Thorne, CEO, sitting in the Bell's modest living room saying the words, "The system is broken." And my company is part of that system. We have to do better. The fallout was immediate and volcanic. Thorne Pharmaceuticals stock dropped 6% in pre-market trading. The board of directors erupted in panic. News anchors debated whether it was a sincere awakening or a cynical PR stunt. Social media split into warring camps, those who hailed Elijah as a hero finally seeing the light, and those who condemned him as the architect of the misery now exploiting it for image rehabilitation. Elijah was summoned to an emergency board meeting via secure video link. The faces on the screen were grim. Charles Denton, the board chairman, spoke first. "Elijah, what in God's name are you doing? You've single-handedly put a target on our most profitable drug. You're admitting liability on national television." Elijah, calling from the study of his penthouse, felt a calm he hadn't known in years. "I'm admitting reality, Charles. The reality is that drug is priced beyond the reach of people who need it. The reality is our patient assistance program is a maze. The reality is sitting on a couch in Cincinnati. Your job is to steward shareholder value, not practice philanthropy without board approval." Another director snapped. "My job," Elijah said, his voice low and steady, "is to run a company that makes medicine to save lives. If we can't get the medicine to the lives that need saving, what is the value we're stewarding?" The meeting dissolved into chaos. Threats were implied. Votes of no confidence were discussed. They gave him an ultimatum: issue a clarifying statement walking back his comments, cease all contact with the Bell family, and let the legal and PR teams handle the containment, or face immediate removal. Elijah looked at their angry, fearful faces on the screen. He thought of Maya's refusal to take his charity, insisting on a fair transaction. He thought of Marcus's weary eyes. He thought of Rebecca's fury. He had spent a lifetime building this company, this monument. Now he saw it for what it was, a cage of his own making. He leaned toward the camera. "I will not walk it back, and I will not abandon that family. If that means you have to remove me, then you'd better get started." He ended the call. The silence in his study was deafening. He had just set his life's work on fire, and for the first time in 5 years since Rebecca died, he felt completely, terrifyingly alive. The battle lines were drawn, but he had no plan, no army, and only one family as his allies. The institutions he had built were now turning against him, and the public eye was a blinding, unforgiving spotlight. He had crossed a point of no return, and the real storm was just beginning. The board moved faster than he expected. By 8 a.m. the next morning, a press release from Thorne Pharmaceuticals hit the wires. It was a masterpiece of corporate deflection. It expressed sympathy for the Bell family's situation. It highlighted the company's commitment to patient assistance programs, and it clarified that recent personal comments by our CEO were made in a private capacity and do not reflect the company's position on its responsible pricing strategy. It was a public neutering. Elijah Thorne was still the chief executive in title, but his authority had been surgically removed. His security pass was deactivated. His executive email account was locked. A temporary office of the chairman was established to oversee operations during this period of external scrutiny. Charles Denton, the board chairman, was now effectively in control. Elijah's rebellion had lasted less than 12 hours before the system he built ejected him like a foreign body. He learned all this from his home phone, fielding calls from stunned executives who were now forbidden from contacting him directly. He stood in his penthouse, watching the city awaken, feeling like a ghost in his own life. Then his phone rang again. It was Chloe Bell. "They're here," she said, her voice tight with a new kind of fear. "Men in suits from the insurance company." Elijah's blood ran cold. "Sure Shield." "Yes, they said they saw the news story. They want to re-examine Marcus's case due to newly presented information. They're sitting in my living room right now. They're asking if we've received any direct donations or preferential treatment from you. They said accepting charity could constitute fraudulent non-disclosure of assets and void our appeal rights. What do we do?" It was a classic, brutal counterpunch. The board had likely tipped off Sure Shield. The insurance company wasn't backing down. It was using Elijah's involvement as a weapon to invalidate the entire case. By helping, he had given them a new reason to deny. "Put one of them on the phone," Elijah said, his voice like steel. A moment later, a smooth, professional voice came on the line. "This is Martin Greeley, Sure Shield Case Review." "Mr. Greeley, this is Elijah Thorne. You are in that home to intimidate a sick man and his family. You will leave immediately." Greeley was unfazed. "Mr. Thorne, this is a standard procedure when potential conflicts arise. Any third-party provision of the disputed treatment can influence the medical necessity review. We're just trying to get the full picture." "The full picture is that you denied a life-saving medication based on a cost-cutting clause, not medical evidence," Elijah fired back. "And if you don't leave that apartment in the next 60 seconds, I will hold a press conference on their front lawn and list every similar denial your company has made in the last quarter, with names. I may be locked out of my company, but I still have the data, and I'm not feeling very protective of trade secrets today." There was a long silence. He heard muffled conversation. Then Greeley's voice, colder now. "This isn't over, Mr. Thorne." "I know it isn't," Elijah said. "Now get out." He heard the rustle of movement, the closing of a door. Chloe came back on the line. "They're gone for now, but Elijah, they're scared of you. What does that mean for us?" "It means the battle just changed sides," he said. "They're not fighting you anymore. They're fighting me, and I have nothing left to lose." But he was wrong. He had one thing left to lose: his connection to the Bells. The board's next move was to isolate him from his only moral compass. He received a formal letter from Thorne Pharmaceuticals' legal counsel, citing a fiduciary duty to shareholders. It stated that any further unauthorized communication with individuals involved in active litigation or insurance disputes with the company could be construed as tortious interference and subject him to personal liability. It was a gag order wrapped in a lawsuit threat. He couldn't call them. He couldn't visit. Any contact could be used against the Bells by Sure Shield and could give the board grounds to sue him personally, potentially seizing his assets. He was in a box, silenced. For 3 days he was adrift. He ignored calls from reporters. He paced his empty penthouse. The silence was no longer peaceful, it was accusatory. He had started a war and then been disarmed before the first real shot was fired. He thought about Maya's lemonade stand, that simple, honest transaction. He had tried to play by the rules of his world, and his world had simply changed the rules. On the 4th day, his home intercom buzzed. His doorman announced, "There's a young woman here to see you, sir, a Chloe Bell." Elijah's heart hammered. He told the doorman to send her up. When Chloe stepped out of the elevator, she looked different. The exhaustion was still there, but it was overlaid with a fierce, determined energy. She carried a large paper bag. "They can't stop me from talking to you," she said without preamble, walking past him into the apartment. "I'm not an employee. I'm not in litigation with you. I'm a citizen visiting another citizen." She placed the bag on his minimalist kitchen counter. "Maya made you something." Inside were 6 glass bottles of homemade lemonade with paper labels reading Bell's Real Lemonade, and a folded piece of construction paper. It was a crayon drawing. It showed a big stick figure man and a small yellow stick figure girl holding hands next to a lopsided square labeled stand. At the bottom, in careful print, "Thank you for trying. Love, Maya." Elijah stared at the drawing, a lump in his throat. "How is Marcus?" "Stronger. The medicine is working. He's talking about maybe trying part-time remote work next month." She looked around the vast, cold penthouse. "He asked me to tell you something. He said, 'Don't fight them on their board, fight them on my couch.' He means fight where it's real, not with press releases and stock prices, with stories." "They've gagged me, Chloe, legally." "Then don't speak," she said, a hard gleam in her eye. "Listen and learn." She pulled a thumb drive from her pocket. "This is from Anya, the reporter. It's not for broadcast, it's raw interviews. With me, with Marcus, with 5 other families she found in our area alone who are in the same boat with different drugs from different companies. They're all drowning in the same system. Watch it. For the next 5 hours, Elijah Thorne did something he had never done in his decades. As a CEO, he listened to patients, not to market research groups, not to sanitized case studies, but to raw, unfiltered terror and rage. He heard a mother describe rationing her son's insulin. He heard a veteran talk about choosing between his pain medication and his mortgage. He saw the same hollow look in their eyes that he had seen in Chloe. The system wasn't just broken for Marcus Bell. It was broken everywhere, and Thorne Pharmaceuticals was a cog in the machine. A new plan began to form, not in the boardroom, but in the shame-filled silence of his living room. It was audacious. It was possibly illegal, and it would burn every bridge he had left. He needed help, not from lawyers or executives, but from someone who understood the guts of his own company. He called the one person he thought might not have turned against him yet, Sarah Chen, the head of manufacturing for Cardio Region. She was a brilliant, no-nonsense engineer who had been with the company for 20 years. She answered on the first ring. "Elijah, I heard it's bullshit." "Sarah, I need a number. The true, fully loaded cost to manufacture 1 month's supply of Cardio Region. Not the R&D amortization, not the marketing bloat. The pure cost of API, excipients, packaging, and factory labor. Can you get it?" A long pause. "I could lose my job." "I've already lost mine. I need to know what I've been selling for $72 a pill." She exhaled. "Give me an hour." The number she texted him an hour later was staggering, not because it was high, but because it was so low. The actual cost to produce a month's supply of Cardio Region was approximately $87. The wholesale price was $2,160. The price to patients like Marcus, after pharmacy markups, was over $2,400. The profit margin was not merely high, it was grotesque, and the justification, funding future research, collapsed under its own weight when he reviewed the company's own financials, which he still had personal access to. A tiny fraction of the revenue was funneled back into R&D for truly innovative drugs. The majority was spent on marketing, legal teams to defend patents, lobbying, and shareholder dividends. He had the smoking gun. The real story wasn't just about one denied insurance claim. It was about the entire edifice of pharmaceutical pricing, built on a mountain of exploited sickness. He met Chloe at a neutral location, a public library. He showed her the number, $87. Her face went pale, then flushed with anger. $87, she repeated, her voice trembling. "And they let my daughter stand in the rain for that." "They let a lot of people do a lot worse," Elijah said. "I want to take this public, all of it. But if I do, the board will come after me with everything they have. They'll try to discredit me, to sue me into oblivion. And they might come after you too. Harassment, audits, worse." Chloe Bell looked at the number on the screen, then out the library window at the ordinary people walking by. "My daughter is already in this fight," she said quietly. "She enlisted the day she set up that stand. You think I'm going to teach her to back down from a bully because it's hard? Let them come." With Chloe's defiant blessing, Elijah reached back out to Anya Morris. He gave her the manufacturing cost data. He gave her the internal financial breakdowns. He connected her with Sarah Chen, who, fueled by her own conscience, agreed to go on background. The resulting investigative piece was a detonation. It aired as a primetime special. It connected the dots from the rainy lemonade stand to the boardroom, from the $87 manufacturing cost to the $2,400 price tag, from Marcus Bell's failing heart to the company's soaring stock price. It named names. It quoted internal memos. It was no longer a human interest story. It was an exposé. The public reaction this time was not split. It was a unified roar of outrage. Politicians who had received campaign donations from Thorne Pharma scrambled to denounce them. The stock plummeted 15% in a single day. State attorneys general announced investigations. The board of directors was now in full-blown panic, facing not just bad PR but potential criminal probes. In the midst of the maelstrom, Elijah received a hand-delivered letter. It was from the Bell family, forwarded by his doorman. It was not a drawing from Maya this time. It was a formal, typewritten document, co-signed by Marcus and Chloe Bell. It was a proposal. They wanted to start a non-profit advocacy group, tentatively called the Lemonade Project. Its mission would be to provide direct financial and legal aid to families trapped in the insurance denial cycle and to lobby for transparent drug pricing. They wanted Elijah to help them build it, not as a figurehead but as a partner. They had already filed the incorporation papers. At the bottom in crayon, Maya had written, "P.S. I will be in charge of Lemonade." Elijah Thorne, exiled billionaire, stood holding the letter. For the first time since he stepped out of the car in the rain, he saw a path forward that wasn't about destruction, but about construction. He had tried to fight the empire from within and been cast out. He had tried to expose its corruption from the outside and ignited a firestorm. Now, a construction foreman, a dental hygienist, and a 7-year-old lemonade mogul were offering him a chance to build something new from the rubble. The war for the soul of his old company was raging, but a new and more meaningful battle was just beginning. He said yes, of course. There was never any other answer. The Lemonade Project found its first office in a donated storefront 2 blocks from the Bell's apartment. The sign was painted by Maya, a simple yellow lemon next to the words "The Lemonade Project," because every cup counts. It was part advocacy group, part legal aid clinic, part emergency fund. Elijah invested $10 million of his personal wealth as seed capital, with the explicit condition that he was a board member, not the chairman. That title went to Chloe Bell. Marcus handled operations and outreach to other patients. And Maya, as promised, was in charge of Lemonade, which she insisted be real from actual lemons, sold at the front desk for $1 to fund immediate grants. They were not naive. The board of Thorne Pharmaceuticals sued Elijah for breach of fiduciary duty and theft of intellectual property for sharing the manufacturing cost data. The lawsuit was a sprawling, aggressive document designed to bury him in legal fees and intimidate his new partners. Elijah's personal attorneys advised him to settle, to sign a non-disclosure agreement and walk away. Instead, he countersued. He sued the board for wrongful termination and for violating their own fiduciary duty by placing short-term profits over patient lives and long-term corporate sustainability. It was a nuclear legal option, guaranteeing a years-long, brutally expensive public feud. But the discovery process in his countersuit became the Lemonade Project's most powerful weapon. Subpoenaed internal emails revealed what Elijah had long suspected: marketing executives discussing how to exploit the desperation of certain patient populations, board members joking about the suckers paying full price. One email chain discussing the patient assistance program contained the line, "The complexity is the point. Less than 5% completion rate is a feature, not a bug." Anya Morris published these findings. The public outrage reached a fever pitch. Politicians could no longer look away. A congressional subcommittee announced hearings on drug pricing, with Elijah Thorne, Chloe Bell, and Marcus Bell listed as the first witnesses. The night before the hearing, Elijah stayed at the Bells' apartment. He slept on their couch, the way he had many nights over the past months. It was no longer an act of charity, but of family. Maya presented him with a new drawing for his testimony, a stick-figure man holding a giant megaphone with tiny hearts coming out of it. The hearing room was packed. Television cameras lined the back wall. Elijah watched as Chloe, in a simple blue dress, adjusted Marcus's tie. Marcus, who could now stand for long periods without fatigue, squeezed her hand. They took their seats at the long mahogany table. Chloe spoke first. She didn't talk about policy or margins. She talked about the sound of rain on a plastic tarp. She talked about teaching her daughter to count coins for medicine. She talked about the specific, soul-crushing weight of a pale blue denial letter. She held up Maya's first lemonade sign, the cardboard still warped from the rain. "This," she said, her voice clear and steady, "is what the system looks like from our kitchen table, a child's arithmetic against a billionaire's price tag." Then it was Marcus's turn. He spoke about building things, about foundations. He said, "My foundation was my health. When that broke, the whole structure of my life came down. I'm not asking for a handout. I'm asking for a fair price for the thing that fixes the foundation. $87 to make, $2,400 to buy isn't a price. It's a ransom." Finally, Elijah was sworn in. He looked at the row of congresspeople, then at the cameras. He began not with a defense, but with a confession. "For 30 years, I built a company on the idea that profit and purpose could coexist. I was wrong. I confused purpose with publicity. I allowed a system to be built where the value of a life is reduced to a line on a quarterly earnings report. The $87 manufacturing cost for cardio region is real. The $2,400 price is a fiction, built on layers of bureaucracy, avarice, and a calculated bet that people like Marcus Bell would be too tired, too sick, or too poor to fight back." He paused, looking directly at the committee chair. "I am here today not as an expert, but as a witness to my own failure. And I am here to tell you that the people you have designed this system to exhaust are done being exhausted. They are organized. They are armed with the truth. And they are led by a 7-year-old who knows that 50 cents is a fair price for lemonade and that $2,400 is a crime." The testimony made headlines worldwide. The lawsuit against Elijah was quietly dropped by Thorne Pharmaceuticals 2 weeks later as part of a non-public settlement. The terms were strict. Elijah gave up all remaining stock options and signed a non-compete clause in the pharmaceutical industry. In return, the board acknowledged his full retirement benefits and, critically, made no claim against the Lemonade Project. It was a retreat. The empire had sued for peace with its exiled king. Charles Denton resigned as chairman. A new, reform-minded board was installed at Thorne Pharma, facing relentless pressure from shareholders and prosecutors. They announced a sweeping review of all specialty drug pricing and a complete overhaul of the patient assistance program, designed in consultation with patient advocacy groups. The list price of cardio region was cut by 40%. It was not $87, but it was a seismic shift. The Lemonade Project declared it a victory, but not the war. With the legal threats gone, the Lemonade Project grew. Donations poured in from ordinary people who saw themselves in the Bell's story. They hired their first staff attorneys, specializing in insurance appeals. They developed a software tool that helped families navigate the labyrinthine assistance programs of various drug companies. Maya's Real Lemonade stand became a weekly event outside the office, often drawing local media, with all proceeds funding emergency medication grants. One of their first grant recipients was a family from the raw interviews Anya had shown Elijah. A circle finally closed. Marcus Bell, his health stabilized, took a part-time job as a consultant for a construction firm that designed accessible housing. Chloe ran the Lemonade Project with a fierce, compassionate efficiency that stunned seasoned nonprofit veterans. Elijah found his role not as a leader, but as a connector and a funder. He used his remaining network and wealth to broker partnerships between medical researchers, generic drug manufacturers, and patient groups, focusing on affordable alternatives. 18 months after the rainy day at the Lemonade stand, the Lemonade Project hosted its first annual stand-up gala. It was held not in a hotel ballroom, but in the community center near their office. Patients, doctors, lawyers, and donors mixed together. Maya, now 9, gave a short speech from atop a small step stool. "My stand was for my dad," she said, looking out at the crowd. "Now our stand is for everyone. Thank you for buying so much lemonade." The room erupted in applause. Elijah, standing at the back with Chloe and Marcus, felt a hand slip into his. It was Maya. She pulled him toward the dance floor where music had started. "Come on, Mr. Elijah. You have to dance. It's the rule." And so, the former billionaire, in a slightly too tight rented tuxedo, danced badly and joyfully with a 9-year-old girl, surrounded by the roaring, messy, beautiful sound of a community he had once been walled off from. After the gala, back at the Bell's apartment for a nightcap of real lemonade, Chloe handed Elijah a folded piece of paper. "We got the annual audit back today, from the accountants." Elijah opened it, expecting the usual financial figures, but circled at the bottom was a different number. The total amount of medication costs covered by the Lemonade Project's emergency grants in its first full year, $1,217,000. Over $1 million in ransom, paid not by desperate families, but by a community that had chosen to see them. But that wasn't the surprising detail. Chloe pointed to a footnote. "Look at the funding source breakdown." Elijah read it. 23% of their funding came from small donations, under $50. Another 30% from larger grants and partnerships. But the largest single source, at 47%, was labeled corporate restitution. It was a fund populated by voluntary, non-tax-deductible donations from 7 major pharmaceutical companies, including a very large, publicly disclosed one from the new leadership of Thorne Pharmaceuticals. They were, in effect, paying into the system that was holding them accountable. It wasn't out of pure charity. It was a mix of penance, public relations, and the cold realization that the old model was untenable. The Lemonade Project had become so visible, so morally authoritative, that it was cheaper for the giants to fund it than to fight it. Marcus smiled, reading Elijah's astonished face. "Turns out," he said, "the best way to get a seat at the table is to build your own table, and then send them the bill for the lumber." Elijah looked around the warm, cluttered apartment, at Chloe laughing, at Marcus refilling their glasses, at Maya asleep on the couch, a lemonade-stained ribbon still in her hair. The rain had long since stopped. The stand was folded away in a closet. But the humble, stubborn economy of kindness it had sparked was now a tangible force, a multi-million-dollar counterweight to a broken system. He had set out to save a man with a pill, and in the end, he had been saved by a cup of lemonade. The transaction, finally, was complete. So what is the true cost of a cup of lemonade? 50 cents plus the courage to stand in the rain. The price of a pill, $87 to make, or $2,400 to buy, or the immeasurable weight of a child's fear. The story of Maya, Marcus, and Elijah is a map of a broken system, but it is also a blueprint for repair. It reveals that the most powerful force against an economy of desperation is not a larger bank account, but a deeper attention. It is the choice to see the person behind the prescription, the family behind the financial ruin. We often believe change requires monumental shifts, vast movements, political revolutions. But this story argues something different. It suggests that transformation begins in the specific, the personal, the unbearably small. A child's lemonade stand, a man stepping out of a car, a family refusing to be shamed into silence. These are the pressure points. When we dismiss them as mere anecdotes, we miss the lever that can move the world. The Lemonade Project did not end drug pricing inequity, but it built a refuge within the storm. It proved that patients are not passive victims, but the most credible experts on the crisis. It demonstrated that even those who built the walls can be the ones to start dismantling them, if they are brave enough to listen to the voices on the other side. The billion-dollar settlements and corporate donations are not a sign of charity, but of accountability, forced into the light by unwavering, ordinary truth. Elijah Thorne found his purpose not in building a taller corporate tower, but in helping to hold a ladder for others to climb. The Bells found security not just in medication, but in a community they helped create. This is the final, surprising arithmetic of kindness. It never subtracts, it only multiplies. What you give to others circles back, not as the same coin, but as a stronger foundation for your own life. We live in a world of systems that feel too vast to challenge, but every system is ultimately a collection of choices made by people. The story asks us, in our own lives, in our own spheres of influence, what are we choosing not to see? What transaction are we allowing that costs someone else their dignity, their health, their hope? And where is our opportunity to step out of our car into the rain and change the equation? If this story resonated with you, consider it an invitation. Subscribe to this channel for more narratives that explore the profound impact of human connection. Tap like if you believe no act of kindness is ever too small. Share this with someone who needs a reminder that they are not alone in their fight. Tell us in the comments, when have you witnessed a simple act create an unexpected ripple? Your stories are the next chapter in this ongoing documentary of human grace. Thank you for watching. May you have the courage to see what needs to be seen and the heart to do something about it.